I knew something was up with this woman. Like that bitch Kasey fend for herself. So crazy.
This scene between Autumn and Taylor unfolds as one of the most emotionally revealing and ethically complex moments in the film, shifting the narrative away from ambiguity and into a more unsettling exploration of control, care, and the fragile boundary between protection and possession. And it does so not through spectacle, but through the quiet escalation of tension that arises when one woman attempts to assert autonomy, while another reframes that autonomy as danger. The scene begins with a sense of quiet observation, as Autumn notices Taylor preparing to leave, her packed bag functioning as a visual symbol of intent, agency, and the desire for self-determination. What makes this moment particularly resonant is how quickly that simple act of leaving becomes interrogated, not just as a logistical decision but as a moral one, as Autumn questions Taylor's motives under the guise of concern. The dialogue initially carries a tone of casual suspicion, with Taylor deflecting and attempting to maintain control over her narrative, but the imbalance of power is already present, embedded in the setting itself. Taylor is on Autumn's property, within a space that has been framed as safe but is increasingly revealed to be conditional. And this spatial dynamic mirrors broader experiences many women, particularly queer women, may recognize: the feeling of safety that is contingent upon compliance, gratitude, or emotional reciprocity. As the conversation continues, the idea of a picnic becomes a fragile cover story, a soft attempt by Taylor to assert independence without provoking confrontation, and its transparency highlights the emotional labor she is performing in trying to navigate the situation without escalating it. Autumn's response, however, reveals a refusal to accept that narrative, and instead she begins to assert her own interpretation of Taylor's intentions, effectively rewriting Taylor's reality in real time. This moment becomes crucial in understanding the film's deeper thematic concerns, because it illustrates how easily care can become a mechanism of control when one person assumes authority over another's choices, particularly in contexts where vulnerability is already present. The mention of the compound and Taylor's past introduces a layer of shared trauma that complicates the interaction further, as Autumn positions herself as someone who understands that past and therefore believes she has the right to intervene. This dynamic reflects a recurring tension within queer narratives, especially those involving chosen family or mentorship, where the line between guidance and domination can become blurred, and where older or more established individuals may justify their authority through shared experience rather than mutual consent. Autumn's insistence that Taylor cannot leave for her own good echoes a broader societal pattern in which women's autonomy is frequently undermined by narratives of protection, a pattern that resonates beyond queer contexts and speaks to the ways women are often taught to prioritize safety over self-determination. Taylor's resistance, though quiet, is deeply significant, as it represents an attempt to reclaim agency in a situation where that agency is being systematically questioned and diminished. Her insistence that she will be fine, that she does not need to be protected, is not just about leaving a physical space, but about asserting her right to define her own boundaries, even in the face of fear. What makes this moment particularly powerful is how the film allows that resistance to exist without romanticizing it or turning it into a dramatic confrontation. Instead, it remains grounded in the uncomfortable reality of uneven power dynamics, where one person's certainty can overshadow another's voice. The emotional core of the scene lies in this imbalance, as Autumn frames her actions as care, as responsibility, as something she is obligated to do because Taylor is on her property. And this language of ownership becomes one of the most revealing aspects of the interaction. It highlights how easily relationships between women can be shaped by unspoken hierarchies, particularly in environments where resources, stability, or experience are unevenly distributed. For queer women, this dynamic may feel especially familiar, as spaces of refuge or community can sometimes carry their own forms of pressure, expectation, or control, even when they are intended to be supportive. The scene also engages with the idea of indebtedness, as Autumn reminds Taylor of the help she has provided, subtly reframing that help as something that requires repayment. And this introduces a moral complexity that challenges the notion of altruism. When care becomes transactional, even implicitly, it can create a sense of obligation that undermines genuine connection. And this is where the film begins to critique not just individual behavior but broader cultural narratives about generosity and reciprocity. Taylor's refusal to accept that framing, her insistence that she does not owe anything, becomes an act of quiet defiance, a refusal to allow her autonomy to be negotiated or diminished. At the same time, the scene does not present Autumn as purely antagonistic, and this nuance is essential to its emotional impact. Autumn's fear, her concern about Taylor returning to a dangerous environment, is not entirely unfounded. And this ambiguity complicates the viewer's response, forcing a recognition that harm can coexist with genuine concern, that control can be justified through narratives of care, and that these contradictions are often at the heart of real-world relationships. This complexity is particularly relevant in discussions of queer representation, where relationships between women are sometimes idealized as inherently nurturing or egalitarian, and the film resists that simplification by acknowledging the ways power, fear, and desire can intersect in difficult and uncomfortable ways. The scene also speaks to the broader theme of visibility, as Taylor's attempt to leave can be understood as an attempt to become visible to herself, to define her own path rather than being defined by others. And Autumn's resistance to that attempt reflects a discomfort with that autonomy, a desire to maintain a sense of control over the narrative. This tension mirrors the experiences of many women who have had to negotiate their identities within systems that seek to categorize, contain, or protect them in ways that ultimately limit their freedom. The film's refusal to resolve this tension neatly is one of its strengths, as it allows the discomfort to remain, encouraging the viewer to sit with the complexity rather than seeking easy answers. In this way, the scene becomes less about the immediate conflict and more about the underlying questions it raises. What does it mean to care for someone without controlling them? How do we navigate the balance between protection and autonomy? And how do we recognize when our own fears or desires are shaping the way we relate to others? These questions are not limited to queer relationships, but they take on particular resonance within that context, where issues of safety, visibility, and community are often deeply intertwined. The interaction between Autumn and Taylor thus becomes a microcosm of larger dynamics, reflecting the ways in which women, especially those in marginalized communities, must constantly negotiate their sense of self within relationships that can both support and constrain them. The scene's emphasis on dialogue, on the subtle shifts in tone and power, reinforces its focus on interiority, allowing the emotional stakes to emerge through conversation rather than action. This approach aligns with the film's broader commitment to treating its characters as complex individuals rather than archetypes, and it invites the viewer to engage with their motivations, fears, and contradictions on a deeper level. Ultimately, the scene underscores the importance of recognizing autonomy as a fundamental aspect of care, suggesting that true connection cannot exist without mutual respect for each person's right to choose their own path, even when that path involves risk or uncertainty. In doing so, it contributes to a more nuanced understanding of relationships between women, one that acknowledges both the potential for deep emotional connection and the challenges that arise when power, fear, and desire intersect.